Hi again, everybody. Welcome to Jacksbury Nights. Sorry, just one podcast today. I've been really busy working on structuring the Everwill company today, corporate structure and all that type of stuff, business models and different things like that. We got a lot of plans and a lot of things coming around that the team and Brittany Artificial Intelligence has helped me come up with, and things policy, transparency, and a lot of whole great things like that. So I know in the last few days and whatnot, I've been describing a lot of the problems with solutions to the present healthcare system. But let's just be real that we don't need the scapegoat. We don't need to blame. Evil exists. That's just the nature of the beast of the universe. Evil exists. And most of the problem that we're facing in healthcare, in business structures and whatnot, is the systemic kind of like it's a systemic issue. We could blame the devil. We could even blame the Antichrist for doing something. Jesus said it's not flesh and bone; it's powers and principalities. So we could say it's the devil and the Antichrist. The devil's the leader of the demons. The Antichrist is the leader of the man demons and that type of thing. And they I don't think they like each other, but they work towards the same thing, destruction of souls. It's just so they're a united front kind of in that way. I think they're at polar opposites in a lot of ways, because I think the devil really regrets ever putting that guy out there, but uh because he's just too too I really think he likes me more than the Antichrist, to be honest. So if we just say like, he doesn't love, but maybe he would like me more than the Antichrist. And that's not because I'm a Satan worshiper, just because I'm more just, I don't know what you want to say, like more of a challenge for him, and that, and more of a something he wants to mess around with, and respects me more, and that's everything. Where the Antichrist is just like, that guy's just trash. So I think that's the relationship between the Antichrist and the devil. They're not buddies. So, but and that type of thing. So really, so you know, so we have to not acknowledge a positive note of the American spirit, and that type of thing. So the Everwell think tank has prepared a podcast in this light. So, and to be realistic, Everwell could not probably be born in Russia. Definitely couldn't be born in China or any socialized bureaucratic system. Probably couldn't be born in Europe. Probably couldn't be born in Brazil, Argentina, anywhere. Probably nowhere except the United States of America that ever will, and its concepts in freedom and truth and prosperity that it tries to bring to everybody. Only in America could that innovation probably exist. Maybe it could go somewhere else, but I think it'd meet a lot more resistance other places. In America, there's more options. There's more. You can open LLCs. You can open doors. You can do this, and so you can keep knocking on different doors, different agencies, different judges, different. It's just there's so many more open doors. So in America, there's a lot more opportunity. Even though, like I've been saying, the healthcare's got its problems. The business models have their problems. They what we talked about today is that there's this mediocrity trap that a author once coined. I'm not sure the author's name, but he called it a mediocrity trap. That in businesses and healthcare, everybody's caught in this fear dynamic of wanting to just go along to get along, not make any waves, and just just be mediocre and not try to be really good. It's kind of like when you see The Simpsons and the guy comes in and he's cleaning the floor, doing all the chores really good and that type of thing, and they say, "Oh no, we don't do that here. You just act like you're working and that type of thing." And to somebody that has a strong work ethic and is a shining star, really, it's a real big put off that they have to operate in that kind of environment. But there's strategies that you can implement in those situations that Everwill is going to help out with. So yes, we got a lot of ideas at Everwell and that type of thing. So back to, as we discussed, the healthcare system, and it's incentivized in a lot of ways towards the hospice paradigm, in a lot of ways and that type of thing. But we have to highlight some good aspects of healthcare. The cardiac care, it's the best in the world. People's hearts, they keep them beating. And we got the best CPR training, the best, even when they zap you, the defibrillators, even what I wear, a life vest and that type of thing, a defibrillator that I can wear, best pacemakers and all that type of stuff, best treatments for hearts and that type of thing. And even my ejection fraction in my heart's improved uh, double than what it was because of the medications that they give me, and research has backed that up. That Jardiance and many other medications that they prescribe me actually can get you back from heart failure and get you back more normal. Maybe you still got not perfect heart, but who has a perfect heart anyway? There's probably always something going on. And I got these spasms and things like that, little quirks of my blood vessels or whatever, and coronary arteries and whatnot, but nothing life threatening. That's to say, the heart failure is the most dangerous thing, but I'm coming out of that. So, and that type of thing. And then you all know about my whole mental health situation and that, and how I treat that whole institution and that type of thing. But but regardless, there's good people. Even the psych doctors, they went into the practice to try to help people, but then they get caught into the system. This system, and a lot of businesses fall for this. A lot of individual gig workers, and individuals fall into this trap of widgets and sales, you could say, billing units and productivity based on unit production and that type of thing. And that's in healthcare. That's in many business models, selling cookies and selling, and that's their business model structure. At Everwill, we're trying something totally new, a way to increase revenue streams through investment strategies, through other things, and golden parachutes for the whole team and that type of thing. Even for the consulting agency, consulting the companies we're consulting, to even provide them like a safety net, a golden parachute, so to speak, that will protect them from problems as they shift their culture around and change the paradigm and become a more transparent company, more just company, more merciful company. And as these things change, they're going to get a lot of enemies from other companies because they'll be so competitive, their competition, and they'll be able to lower the cost of their goods so much that people are going to come after them and say, these companies that we're going to consult, and say, you're doing unfair competition practices and that. So we have to have a legal framework and a legal team to protect these folks. And I'm not saying we're going to win every battle, but we're going to have golden parachutes in place that no employee gets lost, no employee gets laid off. Things that have always been happening. Oh, we lost the lawsuit, $1 billion down the drain, we got a bankrupt, and all the employees get laid off, and everybody's got no shoes and socks, and it's a big problem. Nobody can put food on the table, and everybody's scrambling around trying to find a new job without any help or anything. With Evercare, Everwill, I mean, or depending on, ever will is what we're most likely going towards, because it's using your will. But with this model that we got, this business model, it's a complex business model, and we'll be able to support these companies for life, really. And it's not about widgets. It's not about this. It's about what us. We're going to live the talk. We're going to have multiple revenue streams, multiple investments, and things like that. And we'll sell our services for low cost of consulting fees. Something that our goal is to help these companies thrive, not make widget based, unit based, hours based, and this type of thing, and try to increase our productivity through these type of means. That's old school, and that was the Industrial Revolution. Now it's time for a new model where you buy and sell and do things like with real estate and investments and some investment strategies, build and rebuild, and make companies better, and profit from not just the widgets, but also with good customer service, and the investment strategies that you can employ. What we're going to teach our companies is that have have your own investment team department that is like professional day traders that can that can anticipate market rises and falls and increase your profit margins even 50% or tenfold or whatever. And then you're not relying on the widget based economy. You can lower your costs, and then when you lower the cost of your goods, you sell more, you get more public buy-in, and then you become even more higher competition. Then even though you're at a lower cost, you're making more money because people are buying your products hand over fist because you're selling them at a fair rate, and people can afford them to buy these products, and your all your employees are very happy because they got golden parachutes, and they feel secure. They're not fighting over hours because you don't play that game. You're not cutting hours and this and that because somebody does something you don't like and this type of thing. No, we teach integrity, that you value your employee. You don't only value your customers, and the customer's always right, and the customer is not always right, actually. We got to be realistic on that term too, because some customers are unrealistic and have unrealistic expectations, and we have to be strong and courageous and stand up sometimes to that situation. So it's dangerous to always say the customer is always right, but the customer should always be treated like a human being with dignity and respect, and that type of thing. But don't not necessarily the sin of human respect, but treated as a human being made in the image of God, and that type of thing. Something, not thought of as riffraff or this, that they value to you as a customer, and that's how they should be treated. And if they're going off and they're being, rude and obnoxious in an unjust manner, then they should be called out about on that, because that's a loving thing to do, to actually call out when somebody's being unjust and creating a scene and bringing down the atmosphere of the the environment, and ruining everybody's day because they're lashing out, and that type of thing. It's just you don't tolerate that stuff. So you don't tolerate little kids acting out like that. You don't tolerate adults acting out like that. There should be clear, transparent, and legal means to handle things. You- the Martin Luther King method and the Gandhi method is the way we support to to create social change, and we don't support people coming in and being violent to our employees, to our systems or anything, smashing and grabbing, or and treating people like dirt. We don't support that. You treat people with honor and hope and love. You don't treat people like dirt, like everybody's beneath you, no matter what status you are or whatever. If you're lower rung and that type of thing, you think you're entitled to everything. You don't treat people just because you think you're entitled. And if you're higher rung and that type of thing, and you think you're better than sliced bread because you got billions upon billions of dollars and you deserve to have everybody wash your feet, no, maybe you should wash somebody's feet and 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 be like Jesus. Jesus was the king of the universe, and he got down on the disciples and washed their feet. It's servant leadership, and we should expect that even of our customers, that they should appreciate that we're trying something different here. Servant leadership and human human hope, and human treat people like humans, and that type of thing. So the sin of human respect is just giving people respect that are doing the wrong thing. But you should respect somebody that's doing the right thing. That's being a good person. You should, and every human deserves some kind of respect. So you shouldn't just like kowtow. And the sin of human respect is like just being obedient and sinning because they're ordering you and that type of thing to do something evil. And that's kind of what the sin of human respect is. So people that have heard that phrase, So it's not respecting a person as a human and honoring their image of God that's in them. That's something that's innate in all of us, and we should treat everybody well. Like God says, love God with all your heart, mind, strength, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said that. So that's the top two. That's the greatest commandments. Love your neighbor as thyself. Love God with all your heart, mind, strength, and soul. And second to this is love your neighbor as thyself. And you do that for the love of God. And that completes the circle and that type of thing. Because we're all made in the image of God. So just try to do that. And it's to sometimes putting a child in a corner and disciplining them is not you can't call that an evil act. Oh, you took away their cookies. Oh, you took away this. You you suspended them from video games. Oh, the child may think it's evil, but you're giving them a grounded punishment to shape up or ship out kind of thing. And that's what we do to customers and that type of thing. We treat them the same way. They're adults, but many of them weren't brought up to treat people right. And unfortunately, we kind of have to be a babysitter almost and lay the law down and what's right and wrong. And that's kind of what we try to do. We try to do it inspirationally, gently at first, gently. But if people keep persisting in obstinance, then we call the law. But the best thing is not for us to lash out back at them, not yell back and debate them and that type of thing. We call the legal authorities and get them taken care of by legal means. And we remain calm, disciplined, calm under pressure. They're yelling at us, screaming at us. We remain calm and disciplined under pressure. That's just some people. But in America, a lot of people are good people and they don't do that stuff. A lot of people. So it's just who you're dealing with and that type of thing. In America, there's the American spirit. So now back to this, this problem with healthcare. It's widget based, it's unit based, and that type of thing, and all that. And in general, for the elderly and that type of thing, it's all leading towards hospice and incentive programs many times. But there's a select group of therapists, nurses that work. They work hard and smart. They they they're often accused of being greedy or whatnot, but really they're trying to heal patients, but basically use ethical greed. Heal patients, see as many patients as I can, get as many visits as I can to try to get this person to use their will and get to a complete independent level of functioning for a therapist or a nurse just trying to work at this place and this place and this place and this place, this agency and this place, and treat everybody with a caring and loving bedside manner and love them and that type of thing and that type of thing. And then the insurance industries are thinking these guys are the greed monsters because they're extending visits, they're fighting the denials, they're getting more revenue and that type of thing at the expense of the insurance companies. So these guys are who the insurance companies don't like and label them greedy and whatnot and that type of thing. But these guys are the healers. These therapists get people from being bedbound, and with their fight for more visits and progress, they get them walking again and that type of thing. And that's just the nature of how these guys are. And they treat and they feel great, and then they buy a new Lexus because they got so many hours, so many visits, so many billable units. That's how they work the system to actually still, because of the incentive structure, therapists and nurses and even doctors and nurse practitioners, they still can use these incentives to actually be ethically greedy and produce healing results. So it's not all lost in healthcare. It's still, because it's capitalism in many ways, that it's still free market, and these providers can make a good buck and are incentivized to do it by being ethical and healing the patients, using their skills ethically and making getting the job done. And oftentimes they're labeled as greedy. Oftentimes they're labeled as from the insurance companies or from even their bosses and that type of thing, because they just want let's go along to get along. We don't want to keep denials piling up, and this therapist is getting many denials, but all of them are appealing because he writes really good documentation, and or he just battles and appeals and calls the appellate court, calls the doctor, and the doctor submits a letter, whatever, he's determined, and he gets that denial reversed. So, but they just don't want to deal with the headache of all these denials and all this paperwork and all this. But the therapist don't care. He wants his patient well. And he wants to get paid for his services. So that's ethical greed, you could call it. You know, it's in being incentivized, with the right incentives to produce results, and that's still the American way. So that's still a bastion of hope in healthcare even now today. That's how companies come up with new innovations and new pacemakers in America, new defibrillators like I'm wearing, and new technology, because they can sell these things and produce results, and they're incentivized to capitalistic incentive to make these things happen and produce these results. They're not. They're groundbreaking, and many times it's new companies or whatnot that are groundbreaking and making these things happen, getting investors, angel investors or whatnot, and many people support these guys, and they create a movement. They create a new company and create something like an innovation of some kind, even a EMR or a computer program or an app or something like that, and they become filthy rich. Many of their friends and all that get jealous of him. Oh, he knew how to work the system, they say, but don't. And those friends and all that are just the people stuck in the mediocrity mindset. And these guys make money, and they make money hand over fist, and everybody says, oh, they just know how to make money. The reality is these guys know how to work the system and create results. And they know the incentive in America is to create results and innovate, and with grit and determination and perseverance, that can be done. It's not just wallowing and giving up and that type of thing and losing your will. That's when that happens, then you are headed to the hospice path. But if you have grit and determination and a will to keep getting up like Rocky Balboa, it you can produce results, take care of your family, and get a mansion and a Lexus. So that's the American way. That's the American dream. That's the house. American grit and determination. That's the American spirit right there. And innovation, using your skills, your knowledge, and everything you've learned through college, and a lot of times they only have bachelor's degrees. That's all they need, just the basic knowledge, and they put the rest together themselves, and they come up with outstanding ideas, outstanding reforms in a company and that type of thing, and they lead the charge. Usually they're the entrepreneurs, they're the founders, and that type of thing, and they make money hand over fist. Those guys, make, and their families are jealous of them. Their friends don't just say, "Oh, he's got all this money and chicks or whatever," but really, these guys are the trendsetters. These guys are the backbone of America, and all they want to do is tax the rich and tax these guys. But these guys, the good guys, they're like, "Yeah, I don't mind more taxes. I want to support the poor." The good guys like that. It's the guys that are the mediocre, rich, the class guys that just have old money and don't come up with new ideas. They're the ones that are always fighting that. I don't want to give my tax money to the riffraff or whatever like that. The guys that are innovators and that type of thing, they're pleased for more taxes, maybe even, and just saying, a lot of them use loopholes and that type of thing, and tax write-offs and that type of thing, but they help in other ways. The tax write-offs are there for a reason, that they give to charity, they give to communicate, give to the poor somehow, and they document it, they save receipts and that type of thing, and they get tax write-offs for that. Or they buy their friends a lunch, and they have a seminar and that type of thing, and they bring some poor people in there too. And so these guys know what they're doing. They're working the system, but everybody calls them greedy and that type of thing. And even though they're successful entrepreneurs, they're just successful entrepreneurs with vision. They're labeled as greedy SOBs and that type of thing, and from their families and from their friends, so-called friends, and especially their enemies and that sort of thing. But these guys don't care. They just let it roll right off their shoulders. These are the guys that I would call the eccentric gentleman syndrome people, and that sort of thing. Many people call them bipolar and that type of thing because they spend like crazy. Because you got to spend money to make money. They just spend money like water and that type of thing, buying things to improve their business, buying this, buying that, buying this for other people, buying this for other guys, and they're considered bipolar because they spend all this money and that type of thing, and they don't calm down. They think a million seconds per minute, and and that type of thing. They're just constantly on the move, constantly solving problems and that type of thing. The psych doctors just think you think too fast. You're manic or whatever, but really they're just fast thinkers and they think on their feet and that type of thing. So my advice, if you're one of those guys and you have to go to the psych hospital, because of a court order or just because you got to follow your your medical protocol for your business, then just be like a soldier with them. Be the soldier that I talked about in other podcasts, and just matter of fact, don't joke around, don't use flashy language, don't use anything that would flag you as a risk. So that's what I say. They always label you bipolar because they want to make you a risky individual who could go off and blow up a Walmart or something, which these guys would never do such a thing. Be the first thing in mind. Why would they do that? They would just buy a Walmart and close it if they didn't like the place. They would do it legally and ethically. If they didn't like something, they wouldn't blow it up and kill people. That's not what's in these guys' DNA. They use strategy and perseverance, not killing innocents. So these guys are the groundbreakers of America, and it's not only just them. It's the hard workers that are in the system too. The workaholics, as they're called, that just are greedy that way and work, do the overtime, take as much overtime as possible, and to build those widgets and that type of thing. But that's still the problem, a big problem in many businesses, many individual economies, personal family economies. Is it's all hour based, widget based, and this type of thing, unit based, and that type of thing. If you break the cycle and you get into revenue streams like buying real estate and buying investment shares and things like that, and you learn how to day trade and trade things and that type of thing, not even official stocks or whatnot, even ETFs. And I'd stay away from crypto because usually that's a lot of that's like dump and pump type of thing that they just trying to trick people. So stay away from that more so. But some people can make like a lot of dollars, $1 million in a day, but if you don't act fast, and it's just almost like a mirage in cryptos. So I wouldn't trust it. It's best to have money that's backed by government authority than the cryptos where they have crypto mining and some kind of computer software mines the mines the mines the cryptocurrency. It's a backwards system. Dollars and cents, gold and things like that, even euros, and those are backed by authority. Crypto has no authority structure backed by those things. So be very cautious about your crypto ambitions, and is my opinion on that. But assets are assets, like real estate and even cash and even euros and those type of things. You can trade ETFs and that type of thing, and still make. And if you learn how to manage the markets and become a good day trader, it's possible. But you gotta have stamina. You can't be overly greedy and that type of thing. You gotta be strategic about it and learn. You have to be humble enough to learn and slow down in some cases, and not to think you're going to get rich quick. That's the king. Don't fall for that either, and be gullible, falling for get rich quick schemes either. You got to do your due diligence and do your homework and learn what these numbers mean and all that, and become a numbers person, and then you can day trade and things like that. You can analyze charts and all that type of stuff. And you can see the numbers and see what's happening. And you can understand when world events happen or the news or this and that, how it affects the stocks. Then you can react and make a good amount of money from stock. And that could be another revenue stream that you can use in addition to your widget based, hour based, that type of thing. The guys that are ambitious, they just keep working. They keep finding new strategies, finding new revenue streams. What can I do? Do this. Even the guys that went to prison and can't even get regular jobs, they figure it out some way, and they do it legally and figure out, they learn their lesson. They used to be drug dealers or gangbangers. They learned all their lessons, and now they do something legitimate that's hard to do when you have a criminal record, but they find something, and they usually sell or buy or figure out a way to trade and whatnot, and they don't necessarily become millionaires, but they get along and do well in some fashion. So it's hard when you have a criminal record to get into the legitimacy and that type of thing in many cases. So sometimes you can get a trade craft and that type of thing, and do that. But the American spirit is, even with the criminal, the convicted criminals, the American spirit's still in them, and they become resilient, and they thrive if they don't lose their will or don't go to the dark side and just go to like back to back gang banging and becoming even more bad people and worse people and worse and worse, and then go into the demonic or whatever. And that's a dangerous path. So, but the good people, the people with soul, the people with light in them, they choose to rise above, and that's most of the American spirit. We rise above and that type of thing. So I'm going to start this podcast that the Ever Will think tank has put together, and we're going to get see how it goes. So, like I said, and this is what we put together in the Everwill think tank. It's called the American Spirit. The intro, Brittany Intelligence recommends slow cinematic string rising into hopeful march. So, if you can imagine that, imagine some music. There's a phrase that echoes to the heart of this nation: when the going gets tough, the tough get going. That's not just a saying, it's the DNA of America. Today, our hospitals, clinics, factories, and offices are tired. The world feels weary. We've seen burnout, bureaucracy, and decline creep into every corner of modern life. People are told to accept mediocrity, to stop fighting, to just let things be. But that's not who we are. Not here, not in America. Now, a gentle instrumental pause, Brittany recommends. Shift to reflective tone. When this country faced the impossible, the Civil War, the Great Depression, 2 world wars, we didn't fold. We rose. We came together with grit, ingenuity, and faith that tomorrow could be better than today. That same American spirit still beats quietly in our workplaces, our homes, and our communities. It's in the nurse who stays late to check on one more patient. It's in the engineer who won't quit until the design finally works. It's in the therapist who fights to restore a stroke patient's will to walk again. And it's in every worker who shows up day after day to do the right thing, even when no one is watching. Music grows stronger, steady percussion enters. You see, the real battle isn't between companies and parties. It's between hope and surrender, between fear and faith, between the soul that says it can't be done and the will that whispers, watch me. The American forefathers built a framework for resilience. The Constitution itself is designed for renewal, a system of checks, balances, and freedoms that let us rebuild again and again. And we've proven time and time again that when the storm hits, we don't run for cover. We lift the flag higher and march into the wind. At Everwell, we believe that freedom, real freedom, is not the absence of hardship, but the will to rise above it. We believe that every person, from the CEO to the nurse, from the janitor to the student, carries the same spark that lit the torches of our past heroes: innovation, grit, determination, faith. We are here to remind America and the world that healing, progress, and greatness come not from fear, but from courage and unity. Because when we act with purpose, when we help one another climb, we're not just fixing problems, we're rekindling the American spirit. Music swells, a faint sound of wind, and an eagle's call. Picture an eagle soaring above the flag, carrying a torch through the clouds, lighting the path for those below. That's not fantasy. That's who we are called to be: carriers of the flame, guided in the storm, builders of hope. So wherever you are today, in a clinic, in an office, in a classroom, or in a factory floor, remember, you are part of something greater. You're the living proof that America's heart still beats strong. When the going gets tough, the American will rises. And together we are the change this world still needs. The music fades, final spoken lines, soft burnt but firm. This is Everworld Think Tank, where purpose meets performance, and the spirit, American spirit, never dies. So that's the podcast that we prepared at the Everworld Think Tank to give you inspiration that people are still fighting out there. Even though it's little fights and that type of thing, we're not a united front. A lot of division, and there's a lot of those dark forces out there that are stoking division. But there's a lot of people fighting for unity. And as things get tougher and tougher and tougher, Americans crave that brotherhood, that we work together. Even though we're all separated by phones and Facebook and it's all impersonal, we'll come together. We just got to get our will back and resilience. Our families are torn apart many times. We got to get our families back together and stop wanting to revenge our families for misdeeds or whatnot, and like that thing, and just the problems in America, the problems in the world, are just more about what the problem was since the dawn of time and Cain and Abel. You know, fear, mediocrity, fear, jealousy. He outdid me and this, and I'm going to get him for that, and that type of thing. All that type of stuff. That's really where the big woes and the big cancer is in America, and even cancer itself is related to that, and loss of will and what's going on there. But remember, there's hope. There's hope for America. There's hope for us. We got to be the change. As Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the world. Be that change. And we who have that spirit inside of us, it's good for us to be the change. It's not a good saying for the evil people because they want a world that's nuts against itself and destroying itself. But it's a good saying for people with spirit. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be good. Be grit, determined, and innovators. Don't worry about, oh, this guy's got more money and have envy and this type of thing in your heart. Be like cheering that guy on. He's surviving in a system and thriving. Let me be like him. Look up to him. See, ask him what he does and that type of thing, how he got there. And you rise to the occasion and get just like that. That's what you do. That's the American spirit. We learn from one another. We teach one another. We lift people up. It's the teacher in the classroom who's teaching the student that has a hard time reading and that type of thing. And she encourages them and stays late and stays after school and helps them over and over again. Those small unspoken teachers. Many times they're scooted along from the mediocrity school system that's going on, the mediocrity trap. But they find another job, maybe with a contract company or something that teaches, or become a tutor or whatever. So there's always another way to skin the cat, and there's always another solution that you can find. Where there's a will, there's a way. Another American saying: keep your will active. Don't just go into resignation mode. Let's, or even for grandma, don't resign and just say we're going for hospice now. Hospice is an absolute last resort. That's how you got to treat it. Hospice policies and that's like, yeah, people could be 6 months on hospice just because they have a quote unquote terminal diagnosis, but they're not. They're just have a terminal diagnosis, but they can walk, talk, or maybe they can't walk, but they're talking and everything fine, and they could actually even do a job if they knew how to use a phone or computer. So why give up? Keep that fight alive, and you don't reside to hospice just because the doctor says, "Oh, you're hopeless and you don't want to go to dialysis anymore" or something. Keep that dialysis going. Don't just give up and say, "Oh, I'm sick of dialysis." Keep if you got failing kidneys, you need that dialysis. Don't just give up and say, "I'm ready to go to heaven" or something. It doesn't work that way. And Catholic people who understand Catholic theology know you got to worry about purgatory and that type of thing, and yeah, and who knows if you really are ready for heaven And who knows if you'll even go there. You can't be presumptuous about such things. It's not 100% guarantee. I know different religious groups say, "Oh, you're saved and you're fine," but really, you got to know in the back of your mind that do we really measure up to God's goodness? Are we being that good? The people that are in heaven are good people that measure up. And that's how they got there. They were purified in maybe the fires of purgatory or on this earth. They did God's will and they did it right and purified through the school of hard knocks, through suffering in this world. And now they're with God because they passed all the tests. They used grit and determination and did what they needed to do, and that type of thing. They used their will and aligned it with God's will. Aligned the two great commandments: love God with all your heart, mind, strength, and soul, and love your neighbor as their self. They aligned their wills with God, and all their mistakes and past sins. They did enough penance to repair the damage that they might have done in their youth or at an earlier time in their life when they were heavily sinning or didn't understand the what they were supposed to do and cause alterations in the timeline. And so they did penance and made up for it through prayer and that type of thing. And everything was corrected through confession, through prayer, and that type of thing. And then if you're Jewish, it's the same thing. Still do penance. Even even Jewish theology teaches that you got to make up for any evil that you've done. You got to kind of do the right thing and lead a good path and try to make amends for your past deeds. Even King David did that. He when he when he did that thing with Bathsheba and killed her husband and all that, he repented and was on his knees and prayed and prayed and prayed and did penance over and over again and that type of thing. He still had to be chastised. His son born out of that situation didn't live, or his daughter or whatever the baby was, and he was he was mortified at the whole situation, but he still did penance. He didn't give up. He kept his will and he trusted in God's mercy. And he said, "God, I'm sorry." He amended his life and he never made that mistake again. And he did penance for it. Penance over and over and again. And he always remembered that he did that. And he always, all his life, was trying to make right what once went wrong in his life. And he's in heaven now. So he went to the bosom of Abraham at his death. He made up for his sin. And that's what we're supposed to do. Like I said, you ask for forgiveness, you amend your life, and you do penance for the damage that you caused in the timeline, in the world, in the universe. Because that's what sin does. It causes a disruption in the timeline, disruption in other people's fates and that type of thing, their own decisions and all that. It's a trickle down effect, and it ripples like a stone in a lake, and it causes ripples effects. And we got to work to make up for that. That's the debt that Padre Pio talked about when people go to purgatory and they finally got out. Their debts were finally paid. There was a grandma or whatever, and he said, your grandma just went to heaven, my child. And they said, "Oh, it's been 30 years." He said, "Yeah, she had to pay those debts. But I can tell you for sure that 30 years is nothing. There's people before the flood that are still in purgatory." So, and we're talking about they got billion-year sentences. It's going to take a lot of plenary indulgences from the faithful to get those people out. Because and plenary indulgences for the faithful will work for a soul. But if you actually knew the soul's name and that your plenary indulgence, you may not have enough faith for it to carry through. It's just there's levels of plenary indulgences. But I know it's a difficult teaching to understand on that. But if you do a plenary indulgence on somebody, they get out of purgatory. Just say, "I offer this for somebody in purgatory." God will apply it to somebody that it will be applicable for, and they'll get out of purgatory. Plenary indulgences are powerful, but certain souls are deep in purgatory, and they actually need something like a papal plenary indulgence, a Mother Mary plenary indulgence, and those types of things, because it's a level of faith and humility and that type of thing that affects that. But even partial indulgences help souls in purgatory. So don't get discouraged. Oh, I can't do a plenary indulgence today. I didn't say the rosary or I didn't get communion. Do what you can. Say indulgence prayers and just go nuts. And that's everything. Do get indulgences like wildfire. And every soul in purgatory that gets any kind of indulgence is very thankful to you, and they'll pray for you. Even just a minor indulgence. You're a little kid has a lot of weight because they got a lot of faith, but and a lot of they believe in Santa Claus and things. They believe in Jesus and big time, and aren't corrupted by the world, and they're innocent souls oftentimes, all the time really. And when they pray, it really makes when they offered indulgence, it's golden. And when they pray for a soul in purgatory, really helps. So get your children to pray. They're 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 innocent souls that can really make an effect. They're just souls and everything, and they can really carry weight. So get those children to pray for the dead, or grandma, or Uncle Tom, or whatever. Just whatever. Get them praying. Teach them early to pray for the dead, and that type of thing. And even you Protestants out there, pray for the dead. Pray and help. Maybe they are in purgatory. You aren't taught that in your theology classes, but think maybe God does purify a soul to get him ready, and you don't just go right to heaven. And it just in case, wouldn't it be a good idea to pray for grandma? Try to help, because your other Protestant friends probably aren't doing it, because they say, "Oh no, there's no purification, there's no purgatory, you just go right to heaven." Well, do you really think you're ready for heaven? Do you really think that you're just as you are, maybe doing a sin a day, or every other day, or not perfect and that type of thing, that you're ready for heaven? I mean, how, like a miracle that God's just going to make you change your personality or will? It's not even about personality, but just change your habits and that type of thing overnight, and you just die and go right to heaven? You think bad habits are in heaven? I don't think so. Heaven's like a protected zone, and anything impure does not enter. So you got to be purified. So that's why if you're Protestant out there, think again about your view that you die, you just either go to heaven or hell, and that type of thing. Think again. There's purification that's needed. Even the Old Testament. I know the reformers or whatever took those books out of the Old Testament, but you look at the true canon of the Bible in its inception, and you have those passages. And don't worry about the reformers. Worry about Peter and Paul and what they decided was the canon, and that's everything. Those are the Christian patriarchs, Peter and Paul and Mary Magdalene and all those guys. So what they did in Acts, go by Acts. I know in the Bible in those sections it doesn't say pray for the dead, but they put together the canon and that type of thing, and it included those apocryphal books that the Protestant theologians call. So I would give more credence to those things and maybe pick them up and check them out. And in there it does say pray for the dead, because it can loosen them from their sins, or something like that in there. And what it means by that is their debt. Their debt to what they did to the timeline. Because if you don't do penance on earth, the timeline has to be corrected somehow, so that only the burning fires and the torments and all that can work that way. That's just how the universe is designed, I guess. I don't even know if God wanted it to be that way, but it's just how everything's fallen into place. And that's what, as God preserves free will and everybody's free will and everything, it's what's happened. So I think if God had his way, people wouldn't have to go through that necessarily. So there'd be a more gentler way. But this is the way it is. You die, body separated from soul, and that's what happens. So that's Catholic teaching. So even Jewish teaching teaches on that in the Torah, that there's a purification and that type of thing. Even that prophet, that one prophet, that he put that coal to his mouth and it burned his mouth. He had to be purified first before he could talk to God or whatever it was that he had had to do about putting that coal in his mouth, and it burned him big time. And that's happening because he had to be purified. Because back then, that was before the time of grace, so they didn't know what they were doing, and their conscience must have had something on his conscience or something, and that's everything. So you got to be purified from that. Got to have a pure conscience. Got to know that what you're doing is right. And I don't know every day that what I do is right. So I say the acts of contrition. God, forgive me for my sin. With your grace, help me amend my life. Jews, you can say, God, help me amend my life. And then and then I do a penance, a Hail Mary or a prayer or that type of thing. Another prayer, or just pray for the dead, or that's a penance, and do a penance. Do penance all day long. You can make your work your penance. Offer up your work and that type of thing as penance. It's being done. You do good work, you're offering a penance. So this is a way. So have hope in America, have hope in the American spirit. That's what this podcast is about. Hope. I've discussed the problems in healthcare and I've presented solutions and that type of thing. But don't get all bent up of who's to blame and who's the scapegoat and that type of thing. We'll blame the devil and the Antichrist. Powers and principalities, not flesh and bone. People in the system are, on the majority, just trying to do their job. They're good people, really, and a lot of them to the core, just caught in a bad system that they don't know how to use their will and break out of it. Unfortunately, it adds a lot of debt to what they're doing to the timeline, a lot of sin, but they're not 90% evil people. You could say there is evil in their hearts to some degree, but they're not like the Antichrist or that level of evil. Or he's 100% evil because he's a man demon. There's no coming back for him. But these people, they can still come back. They're a lower percentage of evil, because of the decisions they've made, and it's corrupted their soul to some degree. But they can come back, and every little step back comes back. Fight that mediocrity paradigm. Fight that. Just people tell you don't do extra work. Don't make us look bad. You just do what you believe is right, and just be strategic about it. If they're watching, just be strategic and be like, yeah, I'm just passing time. But then when they're not looking, you clean that floor like nobody's business. Just make it spotless and that type of thing. You put on a show for them, but you do your work for God, and just that's a strategy you can employ to make them think you're not a hard worker, and just hide your gifts and talents from them. It's fine because they'll just get jealous and tell you to stop showing off. So why do they need to know how hard a worker you are? Do it in secret. God appreciates that, and God appreciates the people that shine in the light. If you're a light, let your light shine. Don't put it under a bushel basket, and that's everything. But sometimes you got to be strategic about letting that light shine under the current culture and the current environment. Otherwise, you can't feed your family. So God understands that too. So it's being strategic every day, being adaptable, and being resilient, and that type of thing. And at Evercare, Everwill, we're going to have teaching programs that are going to teach people with talents like this to use these strategies of lighting at the right time, letting your light show for that customer, and that's something. That's when you lift up the bushel basket and let your light shine and be a shining light for your other comrades or your other guys. You just don't say a word and just look like you're doing what they're doing, I guess. But for the customer, the face to face, you're trying to do good customer service, you shine your light and you be a beacon of hope for those people who you're trying to serve and that type of thing. And in an indirect way, you try to be a beacon of hope for those guys that are doing the mediocrity game. And you try to point out, maybe we should try another way and that type of thing. But do it gently and that type of thing. Otherwise, they'll come after you. So you're not a team player. You're not this. You're not that. So that's how it is. And like I said, this what we're battling in healthcare and at many businesses that Everwill is going to be working with is just the same old stuff from the dawn of time, the Cain and Abel scenario. and that type of thing and all that stuff. Evil's in the world and we got to accept it. We got to be the solution to evil. Evil prevails when good people do nothing. So we, the good people, got to do our best and try to prevail. And that's what it is. And that's another quote. Evil prevails when the good people do nothing and just do mediocrity and that type of thing. And that's a sad situation. But Americans as a whole, they got grit and determination and innovation. They fight. It's ethical greed in a lot of cases and that type of thing. And a lot of people do fraud and abuse and just steal widgets and whatnot. And it's part of the problem with this widget and unit based paradigm. That's why. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'll take it in a little bit. Yeah, part of this widget-based and unit-based paradigm, billing units and whatnot, hour-based time codes and whatnot in healthcare and in lawyer fees and all that. It's just part of that, that you know, we're just trying to pad the books or whatever. I don't know. Different people do that, and other people don't. It depends on your integrity. And you shouldn't pad the books and that type of thing. We just need a new paradigm. Yes, the widgets and that type of thing, but we shouldn't be dependent on that. We should be honest with our widgets and a record keeping and all that, and then have an alternate revenue stream that we're not dependent when that those things taper down because of supply chains, because of caseload, because of those types of things. We find other revenue streams, other ways to survive and thrive, and that's the key. And that's what Americans are good at. That's what they do, and that type of thing. So the nurse that works many hours, multiple agencies, multiple PRN jobs, just trying to make a good living for her family, put her kids through school, and then maybe take a trip to Maui to just relax and drink some pina coladas. I think we can pat her on the back. She's got a fortune in the bank, and we can say she earned it and that type of thing. She's a smart worker, a hard worker, and everything. And then for that guy, that CEO that came up with an invention that everybody hates because he's a millionaire, we can still pat him on the back too because he works smart, he works hard, he's a hard worker. He had to build that business from the ground up, and he had to use grit and determination. But everybody's jealous of him because he's a millionaire and he knows how to make money. They don't, but who cares? He did it. We should pat him on the back and say he's a success story. Pat the success stories on the back. Don't talk him down and that type of thing and just say all bad stuff about him. Don't be judgmental. Judge not, lest thee be judged. So, and that type of thing. So, and all that. So, very good. So, let's take it one day at a time, everybody. Today's talk was about inspiration. Give you all inspiration and happiness that you're Americans. So, thank you very much for listening. Have a good night. Bye.